Welcome into episode number 6 of Ryan and Megan podcast. We are Ryan and Megan. We've been traveling since 2020. And what makes us a little bit unique is that we are traveling with our 2 little baby girls. So today we're going to be talking about securing a travel contract from finding the recruiter to signing the final contract.
Before we get into that, please consider going over to wherever you're listening to this podcast and giving us a 5-star review. That only helps our podcast reach more people so we can help people get into this awesome lifestyle of travel healthcare.
We are covering today the whole process of getting your first contract. Kind of wanted to take you step by step through it so you can know what to expect when you go to do it yourself, especially if you've never done it before. So that is going to start with first, getting recommended recruiters. This is kind of your step 1.
Yeah, so if you want to get a travel job, you're going to need a travel recruiter. So you are connected with a travel company. In our previous episode, episode 5, we went over kind of the red flags of recruiters and then what we look for in a travel recruiter. So consider going back to that episode 5 or watching that here on YouTube to really kind of get the best lay of the land of what makes a good recruiter and what to avoid. Once you get established with the recruiter, that's kind of the starting point we're going to start with today. This is saying that you have already gotten those recommended recruiters, you're gelling with someone well, and you're like, hey, I am ready to start looking for a travel job through that recruiter.
And if you do still need some recommended recruiters and you don't have some friends to reach out to, you can reach out to us. We'll be your friends. And you can send us an email at ryanandmeganorear@gmail.com and just let us know you're interested in getting hooked up with some recruiters that are recommended. This step does not mean that you are signing on with them or that you're committing anything to them. It just means, hey, I want to get introduced and learn a little bit more about the industry.
There's also a link down in the description that will take you to a small form for us to get to know you a little bit better so we can pair you with one of our personal recruiters that we think you fit best with.
So you've got that recruiter and you want to start your job search. This is the next step. And to do that, you have to have already passed your board exam for recruiters to typically start actively looking for jobs for you. So for you new grads out there, that's kind of an important first step for you to know.
When we graduated from physical therapy school, we looked into, can we just start travel right away after graduation? And that was a big no, and the reason why we looked into that was because we had other classmates who were doing clinicals and then they were able to work and get paid while being on like a temp license or a temporary license.
Yeah. So some people were already working or had already signed with a job and we were like, we don't have a job at all.
Right.
But we couldn't do that.
In our boards, and it's different for everyone, but our boards was about 2 months after we graduated. So while people were working for 2 months, some of our classmates, we didn't have a job. And so that felt kind of weird, but you do have to pass your boards before the travel company can start looking for something for you.
And then once you've got that, and even maybe a little bit before that, if you're a new grad, you could have the conversation with your recruiter. So you're going to want to call them up or they will call you up and you'll have a discussion about what you're looking for in a job. This typically just means, what type of setting you're looking for, when you want to start working. Like if you already have a license and you can work right away, then just say, find me something as quick as possible. Or, I'm going to take my test in January and I won't get the results back till February. So I want to start working in February. So you're kind of establishing those things with the recruiter. For what you're looking for.
Ideal start date. And then those main priorities that we talk about all the time on the podcast of, what is the pay range you're looking for? What setting do you want to work in? Is it going to be home health, skilled nursing, outpatient, inpatient, that type of thing? And then what's the general location that you want to go to? What are a few states that you're interested in traveling to? Maybe there's a specific area in a state because, like California is huge. So they're probably going to want to know, do you want Northern California, Southern California, mid? You're kind of talking to the recruiter and you're giving them info on what is your ideal, what is your priorities, and then you allow the recruiter to kind of let you know what does the job market look like, because you might want to go to Colorado Springs or you might want to go to Los Angeles, California, and you're just set on that one location. And then if you allow your recruiter to talk to you and they're like, hey, I know you want to go there. I'm going to keep an eye out on those places, but the job market just doesn't have jobs there. You're being honest with your recruiter, let your recruiter be honest with you and tell you kind of what the job market looks like. And they might even tell you, hey, have you considered this state? Because right now the job market, there's a lot of jobs there. Mm-hmm. And so just having that first initial conversation before you let the recruiter loose to start looking for a job for you.
And once this happens, you've had the conversation, they know when you want to start traveling, they will probably set you up with a company portal. So this means you're serious about working with the recruiter and taking jobs through them. You're open to that option. And so they will get you logged in to their portal. This typically just means it's an opportunity for you to upload all of the necessary paperwork that's going to be submitted to jobs. You want to get this paperwork in quickly because the portal is kind of something that they use to submit you to potential jobs. A couple things they're going to expect on there is your resume, license, your active license if you have
driver's license.
Yeah, driver's license, and then like your active state license.
They also will maybe send you a skills checklist. This comes in various different forms, but a lot of times it's like an online little kind of check mark thing, and it just asks you different questions on your skills, like how comfortable are you in the acute care setting? How comfortable are you with geriatric population? And so you just go through and you're honest about, what your competencies are. Mm-hmm. They're not expecting you to be excellent at everything. There's stuff on there. It's like dynamic splints. I don't know anything about dynamic splints. I could point one out if you had one on the table, but that's about it. So that's always like a 0 for me. But they're going to have you fill out that checklist, that skills checklist. The other thing is competency tests. So your travel company will send you an online test, just checking your physical therapy skills. So they'll give you different scenarios. There is a correct answer. It's not as hard as like your board exam you just took, but there are some tough questions on there just testing your skills as a clinician, whether you're a PT, OT, SLP, or even a nurse if you're watching our channel. So those are some competency tests that you'll probably have to have done. But I think the big one out of all those is the resume. You want to get an updated resume submitted to your travel company because during the job process, there's a point where you're going to have to actually submit for a job, and they want your resume.
There are a couple extra things that you will be expected to submit, and this might come after you've said that you're going to take a job, but if you have some of them, you can go ahead and submit them. So this is usually like your CPR certification, your immunization list.
Like a yearly physical.
Yeah.
They're going to want that flu shot if it's flu season. So a lot of times, no matter where you go, they're going to ask for that for the job. So not that you have to have it. If you don't have those things, that's okay. As you get the job, there's going to be certain criteria you have to meet. They will get that all set up for you. But if you already have that stuff, they might just go ahead and ask for it to get it in their system and on file.
The recruiter starts looking for those jobs. And then the next step is them finding a job and asking if you're interested in it. So they're going to, at this point, should be able to give you a couple details on the job, like where it's located, what the setting is, maybe what the hours are, and like the general take-home idea of the take-home pay.
They should give you those kind of basic details: pay, location, setting, probably the ideal start date for the facility. Now, mind you, that's all negotiable, but they can kind of tell you. Mm-hmm. And then also your recruiter can let you know if they've had people from their travel company, fellow travelers, already work at this place. So sometimes places are so rural or they just are growing so much, they are constantly having travelers come in and out, and maybe they work with your travel company often. So you can ask, has there been other travelers that have worked here? What has been their experience? So then, when your recruiter's looking for a job and they're asking you, hey, are you interested in this job in Oklahoma? Why we phrase it as, are you interested, is because it truly is just, hey, are you interested in this job? It's not saying, yep, I want to go there right now and work. It's just, hey, look at these details. If you're interested in it, then the next step would be submitting for that job. Mm-hmm. So just because you say you're interested in it doesn't mean you are locked in for that job. This is just kind of the searching process, as the recruiter is kind of that middleman for you.
And so after being presented with a job that you're interested in, if you want to go ahead and look into it further, potentially take it, you're going to say, okay, go ahead and submit me for the job. That means that your profile is going to be sent in. They're going to be able to consider you. This is also a good time to tell your other recruiters, if you're working with more than one company, that you have submitted to a job, because you want to avoid being submitted twice to the same job. So, and you also want everybody that's working with you to kind of be on the same page. So this is kind of you telling one of your recruiters, yes, go ahead and submit me, and then probably notify any other recruiters that you're working with. Say, hey, I was submitted for this job, and then just keep them updated on if you've heard back, if you're having an interview, stuff like that.
And make sure you are giving approval to your recruiter to submit. They shouldn't be submitting you to a job. If you say, yeah, I'm kind of interested in that, they should not be submitting you until you give them approval. Because you want to avoid having two of your recruiters submitting you to the same job, because that looks bad on the back end of that. Then as you submit for that job, which really means your recruiter is going to send over your resume, if the facility that they send the resume to is interested in having you as a therapist there or a nurse there, they will offer you an interview. They will reach back out to your recruiter, and your recruiter will reach out to you and say, hey, they've offered an interview. And then your recruiter is the person who you're going to talk to set up a time with that facility. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when facilities or hospitals offer a interview to you, they'll also give you hey, we're available at these times. Would any of these work for you? Mm-hmm. And so once you say, yes, I'd love it to take the interview, then you can set up a time.
And taking the interview still does not mean that you're taking the job. This is your time to kind of check out the facility and see if it's a place that you're interested in going to. The next step is actually doing the interview. It's typically a phone interview. And like we said, there's a time that's set up between you and your recruiter, and then the recruiter sets up the time between you and the facility. So you're not talking directly to the facility until this interview. And we actually have a PDF list of the 10 best questions to ask in an interview, and we can pull that up and kind of go through it right now.
Right. Yeah. This PDF is super helpful. These are the 10 questions we always ask. We ask more questions than 10, but these are the 10 most important questions to ask, because again, this interview is very different than how your permanent interviews go. You are interviewing the facility to find out, do I want to sign on that contract and go work for them? Mm-hmm. Because at any point, if you get a bad vibe from the interview, you can say, nope, I don't want to work there. Recruiter, please look for another job.
Do you want to pull that up?
Yeah.
And while Ryan is pulling that up, I'll just kind of go through a couple things that are on the top of my head that we always ask, just to kind of help give you a few ideas of what this interview is and what the important things to look for are. Typically we get on and you're talking with the manager, somebody who's going to be hiring you. They might have a couple questions for you. Usually they're not very in-depth. They can be, but usually they aren't. But they want to know a little bit about your background, who you are, how long you've been working, kind of what settings you like to work in. But typically, they'll give you a chance to ask questions about their facility. We normally ask about the patient population to kind of figure out, what type of patients they are seeing. This might be, pediatric, might be a mix. It might be, elderly, could be ortho, all different types of things. They'll kind of give you an idea of what you're going to be seeing. That can help you determine if, I'm used to seeing that patient population and I'm great at it. Or maybe you're not. If somebody told me I was going to see a lot of pediatric patients, I would say, I'm going to probably need more onboarding time because I haven't worked a ton with that population. So you're going to ask about patient population. Then you'll probably ask about who your coworkers are going to be. If they have any other therapists on staff or nurses, whatever support staff you're going to be looking for. Because if you're a new grad and you're going into a location that has no other therapists, that might be a hard first travel contract to take because you won't have any support at the location. So we always ask that, especially as a new grad. And then also just as a traveler, it's nice to have, at least one other person there to kind of help you get acclimated to the location and figure out how things work there.
I wasn't listening too much, so stop me if I repeat, but these are 10 kind of questions we always ask. I will have the free PDF download down in the description, so just click that link down there. That'll take you to a place where you can download this PDF so you can have it in front of you like we're using now when you're on that interview, because most likely that interview will be a phone interview. Sometimes they do it over Skype or Zoom. This most likely will be a phone interview, so you can have these questions in front of you so you don't forget to ask. So the first one we have on here is about productivity. How is the productivity determined, and what is your expectation once operating at full capacity? So this is an awesome question to ask, because you want to know, how is the facility going to rate if you're doing a good job or not? And you also want to know, how busy is that clinic? You know, there might be a reason why they need travelers there, is because they can't keep permanent staff people there if their productivity is way too high. So you want to know what their productivity is, how many visits are they seeing per day in your 8-hour, 10-hour day. And then when you are up to speed, so orientation's done, what is that capacity that you're looking at?
Well, the next question on the PDF is support staff. So we already talked about that. But the question after that is orientation. And
I think I'm going to stop you there. I think one thing for the support staff that I will say is, if you're a therapist and you work with assistants, so like physical therapy assistants, occupational therapy assistants, it's good to know, like, are you going to be managing one PTA, no PTAs, or like too many PTAs? And so you need to ask, like, not only like, is there other therapists around me that I can ask questions on and feel supported by, but are there going to be assistants that I'm in charge of, and how I'm going to do that? And then also, you know, you want to know your other interdisciplinary things, like, is there OTs, SLPs, nurses you're going to be working with, just to get a lay of the land.
So the next question is about the orientation. So that kind of relates to that first one we were talking about with your productivity. What are you expected to be at full capacity? Well, you also need to know, when are you expected to be at full capacity? You need to ask about how long is the orientation process? What is it like? Am I going to have somebody that I'm working with and can shadow? And find out if it's a reasonable timeline for you. If you've been in this setting before and you're really comfortable with it, you might be orienting for 1 or 2 days. If you've never worked in this setting before and you're not comfortable with it, you might need to ask for a week or 2.
And this is the time to get those orientation details, because facilities, a lot of places, they'll just brush over it. They'll just say, yep, we'll have orientation, we'll get you up to speed, and they leave it at that. No, you want to know the details. What does this process look like? How long does it take? What are the steps? Am I going to be riding along with someone, shadowing someone? How many days do I shadow? How many days do I go kind of at half capacity? And then when is my ramp up? So you want to get those details and ask those questions on this interview, so you know what that's going to look like, and you have something you can hold them to. Because sometimes you ask this question and they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what the orientation is going to look like. And then that kind of puts it on them to say, hey, you guys got to get your stuff in order. If you don't know like how long it's going to be, or what that looks like, or who's going to be training me, these are questions I would like to know before I would even be willing to sign a contract. And then once you have it set, then you know, okay, hey, it's going to be 5 days. The first 2 days are shadowing. Then I'm going to kind of go, you know, see a few patients that next day, and then have 2 days full with a little bit of backup. And then you have something to look forward to, something to plan around, and you feel less anxiety of, are you going quick enough?
And it's also a good time to kind of establish if you think you're going to need a little bit more time to ramp up and they're expecting 2 days. Well, you need to let them know, hey, I haven't ever been in this setting before. It sounds like I'd really like to work here, but I might need a little bit extra time. Are you willing to work with that?
So the next question we like to ask is about the documentation. So we usually ask, what documentation system is used at your facility, and is there scheduled documentation time? So we want to know, like, do you use Epic? Do you use Raintree? Like the actual EMR that they are using, what do you use? Am I familiar with it? They're probably going to want to know, are you familiar with it? That's a bonus for you. And that just brings a little thought to mind. When you write up your resume, this is what's being sent to the facility. We have on our resume all of the EMRs that we have ever used. that we are familiar with. Maybe we'll need a little crash course to knock off some rust if we haven't used it in a while, but it's really great to add those EMRs on there, because if this job uses one of those EMRs, they see that and that gives you a little bonus point for that facility to give you an interview. So something to think about when you're doing your resume. But you want to know what documentation system they're using. And then you want to know, is there scheduled documentation time for you to complete that?
We're big about not documenting off the clock because it is a liability for you to take and for the travel company to take on if you are documenting off the clock. And also, it's unpaid work, which is the liability. So we're very big about, establishing, hey, there should be documentation time on the clock, and establishing that you're not going to be documenting while you're off the clock.
That's one of our big things. So many times we go into places and the therapists there are all documenting like an hour or two after work, unpaid, or they're salaried. So they're just putting in extra work. And that kind of creates a bad habit of that's what now the facility expects you to see this many patients and then do all this documentation at home. And we like to try to break that the best we can as travelers who come in temporarily. And so we're pretty direct on, hey, our travel company doesn't want us to document off the clock. Here are the ways that we are being as efficient as possible with our documentation. So there is some of that to consider. If there's ways that you can be more efficient with your documentation, then you need to take that constructive criticism from the facility. So own that a little bit, but there should never be a point where you're just doing an hour or two after work unpaid of documentation.
As far as other questions goes during the interview, we like to call the last one the general nitty gritty, getting the idea of what's going to exactly be happening while you're there. So this can include, what exact hours are you expecting me to work? Are there going to be any weekend shifts? Am I ever going to be on call? Is it 10-hour days or 8-hour days?
What's the dress code? So do you have to wear scrubs? Is this a business casual, khakis and a polo? How much time is allotted for each visit? So for us, we want to know, do I have an hour to do an eval? Do I have an hour and a half? And then for my treatment times, is it only 30 minutes or do I have a full 45 to an hour? So you want to know, what is the allotted amount for those appointment times?
And then it's also good to know if you're going to be following patients through their episode of care, because sometimes they bring you on just because they need to get more patients started and they have a staff that's already there to kind of treat, or they have PTAs, assistants there to treat. And so you can kind of get an idea of what your role is going to be and what they need you to do while you're at their facility.
Usually the facility is pretty honest about that one, which is really nice. And I actually don't mind it too much, because sometimes they'll bring you in and they say, hey, we really have a lot of initial evaluations we need you to do, and we're going to then give it off to your PTAs to do most of the treatments. And so this is why we're bringing you in. And now I have a little bit of a vision from them, a game plan of, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to do some evals, and I'm going to help them in that area. And that always makes me feel better than if I show up and I'm like, man, I'm just getting swamped by evals. I never get to see people. I'm a little bit more aware of what they're desiring.
And then we've got a bonus question on our PDF. Should we leave that a little secret and have people?
No, give it to the people.
Oh, he's so nice. So our bonus question that we think can help you stand out as a traveler is to ask them, how can I be the best traveler for you? With this question, they know you're serious about really helping them out. You want to come in and show them that you're capable of, solving this immediate problem that the facility is having.
And their feedback is so valuable to that question, because if you listen well, they are going to tell you exactly what they need you for. And they're probably going to be very honest. So they might be like, hey, we just have a lot more patients than we have therapists, and we need someone to come in here and help ease the caseload for our other therapists. So then you know what your role is. And it looks good on your interview to say, how can I be the best traveler for you? But really utilize that answer that they give you so you can impress, because you want to be good. We don't want to just be travelers that come in and make more money and then we're not good at our job. We want to be good therapists. We want to be good nurses. And we want to come in there and be of assistance to our fellow coworkers and to the facility. And so this is one of those that we can get a good answer from on what we need to do.
So that's a little overview of some of the really important questions we like to make sure and hit when we are in that interview. And then as far as what to expect at the end of the interview, do not expect to give the person who's interviewing you an answer as to whether you are going to take the job or not. They might ask, but really it's not appropriate to tell them. It's more appropriate to communicate it to your recruiter. So you can say, hey, I would love to just review over the details of what we talked about during our interview. I'll get back with my recruiter and they can get with you, on what we're thinking.
Right. Be nice. Thank them for the interview. Say, hey, this does look like a really great place to work. I'm very excited about it. Let me think about it, consult my recruiter, and they will be getting back to you. But don't accept the job right there on the interview, even though you might feel a little pressure too.
Yeah, but that's kind of the role. One of the helpful roles of the recruiter is they can kind of be your middleman communicator. So if you're not interested in that job, then you'll just move on to another interview. And then if you are interested, this is when your recruiter is going to officially hand you a job offer.
The facility, if they like you, they will send an official offer, not directly to you, but to your travel company. And then at that point, you still are able to back out. I know it might feel like, well, I've already interviewed and all that, but if you got a bad vibe, if there were some red flags during that interview from the facility, you don't have to work there. You can back out of that, and then your recruiter will kind of start this process over. But if the facility offers you a job, then they will let your travel company know, and your recruiter will tell you. Then you can accept that job. And let's say you accept it. This is not an official acceptance because there's going to be a whole contract negotiation. So it's kind of weird because there's like multiple steps where you're like, yes, I would like to continue with this process.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the official acceptance until you sign on a contract.
Exactly. Let's say they send a job offer. You say, yep, I would like to work here. That means next your recruiter is going to draw up a contract with all the details. And we'll kind of review a little bit of some of the details that should be on that contract.
And really, this contract is there's probably two contracts going on. There's a contract between you and your travel company, because that's who you're working for. And then the travel company has a contract with the facility because the facility pays the travel company and then the travel company pays you. So a lot of these details are actually you negotiating with the travel company. And then there's a few details like requested time off that they might relay to the facility and say, hey, my worker wants these days off. Is that okay? And then they write that up in their contract and your contract. We'll go over like some of the contract details that we like to negotiate and that you should see on your contract.
So first and foremost, there's going to be your hourly pay on there. And your hourly pay is going to be separate. It's going to look different than your take-home pay that you were told because you are paid partly as an hourly employee, and then you're also paid with stipends. So usually the hourly rate, at least for physical therapists, is somewhere between $17 to $20 an hour. And there are certain ranges that you want to stay within so that you're not like violating tax type stuff.
Yeah, okay. So let me just say this. If you are a therapist right now and you're hearing that $17 to $22 per hour, you're thinking, and if you're from the permanent job world, you're thinking, whoa, that's really low. That's way lower than what I make. I make $60 an hour as a normal physical therapist. You're right. That is a lot lower. But see, what they do on a travel contract is they lower your hourly rate and they increase your stipends. And why they do that is because these stipends over here, tax-free. They don't get taxed at all.
Which is an advantage. So you want as much money in stipends as possible.
As allowed.
You want, right, as low as possible money being paid hourly. And there is a certain allowance on that.
Because that hourly rate, as you work 40 hours per week and you're making that $20 an hour, that is taxed. So that will be taxed. So your payment comes out in one lump sum, but it's made up of two different things, your taxed amount and then your untaxed stipends. Now, what Megan was talking about earlier was you can't just lower your hourly. Now that you have that concept down, you can't just lower your hourly to like $5 an hour because that shows red flags to the IRS of like, okay, wait a second here.
Right.
And so the range right now with the market, it seems to be around that 17 is about as low as you want to go. And then 20 to 22 for physical therapists. If you ever have a travel company that's trying to go below that, that's kind of a red flag.
Make sure they know what they're doing
to us, but you want to be around that kind of $20 mark. Some other contract details that you should have on there is, of course, the location that you're going to be working at, the setting you're going to be working in. And the setting can be important, especially like if you're a nurse and you're set to work on a certain floor, ICU, emergency room, or even with a therapist, if you're going to work in a hospital, you might be doing outpatient in the hospital, but you want to know, am I doing outpatient in the hospital and then also working a little bit of inpatient?
Right.
So you want to know your setting on your contract.
And then they will also have your start and end date, or they should have your start and end date. And obviously this is negotiable. So the facility might have had a date that they preferred to have somebody say you can get there a week afterwards. That's okay to kind of negotiate. Your recruiter will talk with the facility and they'll say, hey, that's fine. We'll go ahead and continue with this traveler. And then they put it in the contract to make sure that you are all clear on what day you're starting and also what day you're ending. And then in addition, you want to go ahead and request any time off that you're going to be expecting to take during the contract. We have had a couple different contracts where we're able to say during it, hey, I want to take this day off, or maybe we had a 4-10 schedule and we wanted to shift which day we took off. Sometimes that's possible, but for the majority, you want to think through your weekends. You want to think through anything that you already have planned and request it off and get it approved and written in the contract.
Yeah, go ahead. Don't be afraid to ask time off. The worst case scenario is the facility will come back to your recruiter and say, hey, we can't give all these days off. We can only give this. But your job usually isn't in jeopardy. So go ahead and ask those off, because once they're set on that signed contract, then you have those days off. Unpaid, of course, but you have those days off. And we've even had like when we had Lainey and I took 2 weeks off, that was signed into my contract. And since I was taking an extra 2 weeks off, the facility actually reached out to me and said, hey, instead of doing a 13-week assignment, can we add 2 weeks on the end? So it looks like a 15-week, but you're taking 2 weeks off in there. So they might even ask you that. And I was totally okay with that.
And then a few other things that they will have in this contract is your hourly guarantee. So sometimes in contracts, and we usually recommend to always have some form of an hourly guarantee. Sometimes they will have 36 hours or 40 hours. And what this means is that they're saying, we should have this much work for you, but if we don't, we will still pay you for this amount of time.
Right. We always say go for the 40-hour guarantee. This means that no matter what happens each week, they're going to pay you for a full set of 40 hours. We've gotten this multiple times with contracts. Here recently, it seems like the market is going to 36 hours guarantee, which still isn't bad. So if anything, if I work less than 36 hours, they're going to pay me for those 36 hours. And so that's always nice to have, because last thing you want to do is you want to show up to a facility, you'd have no hourly guarantee. And then they're like, well, we don't have enough people. And so we're only going to give you 15 hours this week.
Right.
And you're kind of stuck there because you're stuck there with that 15 hours per week.
That would not necessarily be what you signed up for. You signed up for a 40-hour week and they're saying, hey, we can't give you the work, but you have to stick around because, we have this contract with you.
The other contract detail that you want to look for is your 30-day notice. And what this 30-day notice is if you get to the facility and it's unethical there or any reason you need to cut the contract short, then you have 30 days that you have to give notice to the facility. Now, obviously, if there's like a bigger issue and you need it to be sooner, then you can consult with them. But this is like the notice that you want to give to break that contract. And it goes both ways. So if the facility say they're waiting to hire a permanent therapist and they hire someone while you're there, then they can give you a 30-day notice and end your contract early, but at least they're going to respect that 30 days. And so you have time to start looking for another job. Right. So that's good to have in writing there.
And then you also want to get mileage reimbursement in writing if you're going to be driving while you're working. So that's the home health setting. We work with this one often. Lastly, I think is your schedule. So you just want to establish, are you going to be expecting me to work 5/8, 4/10, some other different schedule?
Then the rest of the contract details can be really more directed towards your travel company. The facility is not going to be giving you this. It's like different reimbursements. And it's always good to have these in writing so you can hold your travel company accountable.
But it might not necessarily be on your contract.
It might not necessarily be on your facility, contract. This might be, sometimes this can be as simple as in writing through an email, but this would be like your travel reimbursement. So like the travel from wherever you're located to your next contract, usually they'll give you a stipend for that. Can be for CEU reimbursement. And they might have a process where when you get CEUs, you turn it in, but you want to know how much money do I have towards that? And then also license reimbursement. So they should be letting you know, hey, you're getting your Montana state license. We're going to reimburse this much of that. And so you want that stuff in writing, whether it's in the contract or maybe even in just a simple email.
So once you've gone through all that stuff and you've negotiated things how you would like, you've read the contract and looked for the details, you're happy with it all, you can go ahead and sign it. And that is the final step of getting your first contract.
Right. That is you officially accepting your first travel contract. Give yourself a little pat on the back, a little applause. But once you sign that contract, you're rocking and rolling.
Yeah.
So it's exciting stuff. Hopefully this was helpful to just kind of go from, how do you get a travel healthcare job starting from the recruiter to signing on that contract? Mm-hmm. And this is really the process that you're going to go through, the interview, the searching for the job. And to be honest, the time frame of that can vary greatly. So sometimes your priorities are very particular. Well, you're going to have to wait and be patient on finding the job. And you might even get to the point where you submit for a job and they don't offer an interview back. So the timeline can vary depending on a lot of different factors. Mm-hmm. But this would be like, hey, you submit, they give you an interview all the way up to you sign that first travel contract.
Yeah, and hopefully it gave you a good idea of what to expect so you feel like you're not going in blind or missing something while you're in the middle of it all.
And what makes this process go 10 times smoother is having a recommended recruiter. Mm-hmm. So again, consider going down to our description and clicking on our link by our recommended recruiters tab so we can get you connected with one of the recruiters that we personally work with and trust. And then you can start this journey on getting set up, getting your portal set up, and start searching for your travel company. You can also, send us an email over at ryan@meganorear@gmail.com. And we work with recruiters who work with physical therapists, occupational therapists, any assistants, and speech therapists. And then our travel companies that we work with also have a nursing department. So if you happen to be a nurse who's watching our channel, we can also get you hooked up with some recommended recruiters.
So now we're headed into the segment of what we've been up to. And Ryan kind of had a little particular topic he wanted to discuss today.
Right. So over this past week, Megan and I were having very deep, thoughtful conversation like we always do. And anyway, we got to talking about, what makes a rich life. I think when I was younger, I would say, I'm living on a yacht. I'm driving my Lambo, flying in a helicopter, like rich stuff.
Oh my gosh. I can't even picture you in a Lambo.
But I guess since we've gotten older, maybe a little bit wiser, hopefully, what does make a rich life? Because there's certain things that we can do now that's accessible now that really makes our life feel rich.
Yeah, it's kind of that idea of maybe you don't need just boatloads of money to be living a rich experience, or having certain things that you think kind of increase the enjoyment in life. And so we were talking about what were some of those things so that we could try and have them now while we don't have boatloads of money.
Right.
A couple of those things for you. What would you say those are?
Well, I think this conversation came up because we got our new refrigerator here in our kitchen.
Yeah,
and just like the new refrigerator, right? It cost us some money. This was a consumer thing we had to buy, but it's made life awesome. There's filter water on there. There's ice on there. It just functions way better for our family. While that's not a $40,000 yacht, we feel pretty rich with this new fridge. And then my big takeaway was I got to take the old fridge, put it in my garage, and I now have a beer fridge.
Yeah.
And so we like to say we are beer fridge rich.
Yeah. And there's a certain aspect of actually having what we call the garage beer fridge where we feel like we can, host people a little bit better because we have a place to have a whole bunch of extra, doesn't have to all be beer, extra beverages for people to enjoy that is cooled. Before we had that, when people came over, we would say, well, we got milk and we got tap water. What do you want?
Yeah, that was about it. It was pretty lame. No one came over to our house if you wanted to know.
But then we got our fridge and everyone's like, heck yeah. So I definitely have been enjoying the ice because I love some iced water. I drink more water if it is iced. And so now I am a more hydrated person and maybe I'll live a little bit longer.
Right. Yeah, it's
because of this fridge.
It's those simple things like ice really doesn't have to be that hard. You can have ice trays. Just these small little upgrades in life that you can make that make your life feel very rich. I think another one that I think of is squeezable sour cream. So I love sour cream, and I have gotten to the point where I can pay up for the squeezable kind. That's a whole lot easier than me running a spoon down in a thing. That little upgrade just makes me feel so
tiny luxury.
Rich.
Yeah. One of mine is having like wine in the house to offer to people. We keep coming back to drinks, but wine, especially red wine, it's one of my favorites. And having it to offer in the house, kind of keeping a little bit around, even though maybe it increases my grocery bill a little bit that week. I have something there to enjoy or to offer to other people to enjoy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then inviting spaces, I think, is one for both of us. So we have an awesome back deck that we get to go out there and enjoy with other people.
But we didn't have furniture for that back deck for like a year and a half. So you could stand out there or you could sit on the wooden ground, but you couldn't really enjoy it.
But now we have patio furniture. And so this is just a great inviting space that we can go out there and enjoy. We can bring friends over. So just all these different things that really make up a rich life. We would really love to hear kind of what little things in your life are little upgrades that make your life feel rich. Leave a comment down below on this video because we'd love to read those and just kind of see what else comes up.
Yeah, and hopefully maybe it'll kind of spur you to think about, what would make me feel like I'm living the rich life? Just because it's kind of taking the focus off of, how much money can I make? How much money can be in my bank account? And pulling the focus more to what is going to help you enjoy your time more with the people that you love. And that's always usually what our motivation comes back to is we want to be able to enjoy our time how we like, and we want to enjoy it with the people that we love. Right. And that's really what's more valuable than having a big number in your bank account. So,
right. And that's one of the main reasons why we choose the travel lifestyle is because it has allowed us to go see different things with our family and make those memories together and have awesome deep conversations about things we're seeing in front of our face that we wouldn't normally get to see if we were working a permanent job full time in one place. And so that makes our life feel very, very rich.
All right, let's move on to our last segment. But before we do, go ahead and check out our website, ryanandmeganorear.com. If you want to just see a little bit more of the other resources we've got out there, it's kind of a spot where we've hosted it all. So we have got our podcast, we have YouTube videos, we have some articles, we have some mentorship opportunities. So you can check out our website at ryanandmeganorear.com if you would like to learn more. Our last segment is what's been good, what's been poopy, what's been good.
As a traveler, sometimes you get shuffled around. And so I've been really getting shuffled around where I'm going to be working home health in the St. Louis region. But my boss is really great at conveying what is needed. But I love knowing kind of details on how can I be the best employee for someone, because if I'm just guessing, then I never feel like I'm accomplishing anything. And my boss does a really great job of kind of displaying, hey, this is where we need you and this is what we need you for. And if it's not clear, I just simply ask the question of like, well, does it look like this? What does it look, And so I had a good conversation this week on where they're needing me now. And it's actually taking me out of an area which I didn't feel too comfortable in, and putting me somewhere else where I can be of service. And so that was what was good this week.
What's been poopy?
What's been poopy is my time being taken away. So I'm so jealous with my time, and parenting is very hard. And so to be a good parent, is there a good parent? We're all trying our best, but to be a good parent, there has to be a lot of patience. And so sometimes that's really tough to have that patience, and it always seems like I'm asking for more patience from God.
Yeah, you're right. It does take a lot of patience. It takes a lot of self-sacrifice, self-sacrificial love, I think, is one of the most full ideas of what love truly is when you have to sacrifice yourself. So it's a good thing, but a hard thing.
All right, Megan, what has been poopy?
What has been poopy is the fact that I'm sitting here right now sweating, like drenched. I guess I came with the wrong attire. It's been a little bit cooler in the morning, so I've been like wanting to put on a sweater, but then by the afternoon, it's like still 80 degrees outside, which is a little too hot for a sweater. But right now I'm sitting here like sweating buckets. So we need to like wrap up this episode so I can go change. That's all I'm saying.
All right. What's been good?
What's been good? This weekend, I'm going on a road trip with my girls and my mom to go see my brother and sister-in-law and their little baby. So it's going to be their first time meeting Lainey, and it's going to be the first time I've gotten to see my little niece in a while. So that's going to be exciting.
That'll be fun.
And then Ryan's staying home and working the weekend. So he's going to get a little bit of time back to, do whatever.
Yeah, might get some sleep this weekend.
You might get some sleep. Oh my gosh, I haven't even thought about the sleep aspect.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you all for watching. If you could, just hit that like button. Consider subscribing to our YouTube channel or following us wherever you listen to podcasts. But thank you for coming in. Hopefully this was helpful. And until next time, see ya.